me. I'm joined now by the head of the Association of Chief Police Officers, Sir Hugh Orde. So just to pick up that last point, to many people watching this will look like sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Well, of course, every case has to be looked at on its merits, and of course, in this particular case, the IPCC is now investigating it. In general terms, the oversight of this is substantial. Chief officers take it extremely seriously. We are overseen by the fiercely independent surveillance commissioners who are
After you take your decision, they don't go through it one by one, though. After you've taken a decision, so you can do it on the nod in a way you can't do with wiretapping or phone tapping.
Well, it's certainly not on the nod. I was responsible in Northern Ireland for some of these very sensitive cases. We took it extremely seriously, and the points made in your film, I always made sure that when we looked at every single case, was it the least intrusive method of getting critical intelligence to save people's lives? And at the top end of this business,
this isn't Northern
we are dealing
Ireland,
with serious crime.
With respect, this isn't Northern Ireland, it's not Al-Qaeda. We had a judge in a related case talking about the defendants, environmentalists, as honest, sincere, conscientious, intelligent, committed, dedicated, caring. You've got it out of proportion.
But of course, in that case, they were looking at taking out one of the biggest power stations, supplying over 2 million people, hospitals, vulnerable people, for a considerable period of time. And I think the public will form a judgment on whether that is serious or whether it is trivial. My judgment, professional judgment, is it's actually a very serious case. Now, there's a real debate to be had, I think, about proportionality and about oversight. And since I've taken over this job, I've been very keen to move my association on into a far more public and transparent way. That takes time. It is work that is well in progress.
The implication of that is it's not been proportionate.
Well, I disagree. I think every case has to be taken on its merits. I know my colleagues take it extremely seriously, and I know that they do look at proportionality as the starting point, as well as looking at alternative ways of doing this difficult job. But let's be very clear about the tactic. The tactic is an essential one to keep people safe in this country. In the routine, it is deployed against serious and organised crime.
But do you not accept that this has been botched because the National Public Order Intelligence Unit, which ran it for ACPO, is now being transferred to the Met? You've already made bureaucratic changes in response to this going public.
Absolutely not. Those changes have been taking place since I took over a year ago. Indeed, we got the police authority, the Metropolitan Police Authority, agreed to take this oversight on back last year. This is not
Why
a
was it
reaction
necessary to
this.
change that?
Because I'm very keen to make sure we have the right oversight, which is more transparent than my association can currently deliver in its current form.
But did you know about the Stone case when you took that decision?
No, we did not. No, this took place, if one goes back, I took over in September 2009. I gave evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee the month after, where I clearly stated we need to look at and reform ACPO. That is what we've been doing. For this tactic, and the officers who undertake this incredibly dangerous task in the majority of cases, the overwhelming majority of cases, keep people safe in this country as well as keeping people safe in Northern Ireland.
Can you understand, however seriously you may take this, many people watching will think this is the police infiltrating environmental protesters in order to protect big businesses?
Well, absolutely not. What we were, in this particular case, and I don't want to talk in much detail, clearly because this is now an IPCC investigation, what was prevented, what was disrupted, was a determined effort to take out a major part of a national infrastructure, a major power supply to a substantial number of citizens. Now, I think the public will form a view on whether it is reasonable to deploy sensible tactics to minimise that impact and, indeed, bizarrely, actually minimise the charges made against those individuals because they were arrested pre-event. They were arrested for minor offences before this serious offence took place.
I think people will also understand why you can't go into specific details about this case, but you can presumably say, as a matter of principle, whether a police officer who infiltrates an organisation such as this is authorised to sleep with people as part of it, to form intimate relationships with these people and then betray them.
Well, every officer is answerable to the law. It is as plain, as simple as that. Any officer that steps over the line is answerable to the law in the same way as any other citizen.
But it's obviously not illegal to sleep with people, but it is not advisable, surely, for an undercover police officer to form those kind of relationships.
No professional undercover officer, and I know many of these brave people, would dream of of doing something of that nature, which is clearly why, in certain cases, it is right that it is referred to other people to investigate independently and to report on their findings, which I know the IPCC will do. They do it routinely.
Do you have, you said that these are brave people, will form a judgment about this, but do you accept you've got a duty of care to your employees? And in this particular case, this police officer, former police officer, seems to be very upset by his experiences.
Well, of course, these are very difficult cases, and officers operating in these environments operate under extreme stress. Indeed, the Act you referred to in your introduction, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, requires us to take their welfare extremely seriously and appoint an individual officer to look at it. That, I am sure, will form part of the investigation undertaken by the IPCC.
Do you know, I don't expect you to tell me the number either, but do you know how many people have infiltrated these groups? I mean, we're talking about dozens of people or more?
It's not something I would talk about publicly. What I can say is if people seriously think we deploy huge numbers of people in this very difficult territory, the answer is clearly no, we do not. These are very precious resources, and the overwhelming majority of undercover officers are deployed to keep the citizens safe from dangerous criminals who operate in this country and indeed nationally and internationally. That's what the primary role of an undercover officer is.
The buck stops with you on this.
The buck absolutely stops with senior police officers, and every single case that is authorised by a senior officer, an assistant chief constable or above, in the geography where that operation is running. Indeed, the Act requires a superintendent to look at these. What we say is it's so important and so serious that the right challenges are put in place before they're deployed. It is actually undertaken at ACPO level.
Sir Hugh, thanks very much.